Hey everyone, this is Carla Jenkins, and welcome to this episode of Projectize. And this episode is the 3 lessons learned from Slack being down. So, yesterday, Slack, a workflow management and project management tool, went down, and I feel that it being down offers some very valuable lessons for people and project managers that use the app. So, for this episode of Projectize, I'm going to discuss Slack being down and the implications for project managers. So, number one for Slack is that always have a backup communication plan. As I mentioned, Slack is a workflow management tool, but 90% of everything you do in project management is communication. And when Slack stopped working, communication stopped. But as a project manager, you always have to have a contingency plan that's always built in to your overall project management plan. And furthermore, you shouldn't just have one mode of communication. You should always have a backup or a contingency communication plan. So that's lesson number one that project managers should have learned from yesterday's Slack being down. Number two is Slack is not your company or office email. They're different. Yes, Slack is so ubiquitous that you think that it's a substitute for your company's email and how you communicate, but Slack being down just magnified that it's not. I know that Slack has subscriptions, but Slack is an external communication channel. Your company's email, your office email, is your internal communication channel, and you need to distinguish between the two. Hopefully, when Slack went down, you have the email address or the phone number of the individual so that you can continue working and sending the documents that you needed to send, because work continues whether or not Slack is down. But for project managers, please don't misconstrue a proprietary tool, which Slack is, with the company email. Those are two separate things. Any tool you use, it's not just Slack. It can be Asana, it can be Confluence, Jira, MS Team, Microsoft Teams. All of those workflow management, those are external communication. Your email is internal and it's still a communication mode that will last when Slack goes down. So number two is Slack is an external communication channel and it's not your company's email. And that's another lesson learned, especially when some project managers are over reliant on Slack and they treat Slack as if it's an actual company email. The third thing for Slack is to make sure that your project schedule isn't down to the wire on the critical path. So I'm going to introduce a term, critical path. Critical path is in the project schedule management, and that's when your timing is zero, meaning you have no slack. Well, that's where the name comes from. You don't have any lag or any buffer. So if your project is delayed during this phase, it's always going to be delayed. You can't catch up. And what Slack being down exposed some project managers who always want to run their projects on a critical path and haven't used effective schedule management tactics and techniques. It's very important that you don't always have your projects on the critical path, because whenever something happens, and it usually does, your project timing suffers. Remember, you have 3 constraints: time, scope, and cost. So make sure that you're on time with your projects, within scope, meaning keep the main thing, and under budget. And what Slack did, because you couldn't communicate because you were over relying on it, that meant that your project schedule suffered. And the lesson learned from that is to always make sure you have some type of buffer, or that you don't wait to the last minute to do something. As project managers, you plan because you know everything isn't going to go right, and it just so happened that Slack went down. But if you implement any type of time management techniques, and you make sure you have time, especially if it's a big project, you have that lag. So when things like this happen, you won't be surprised and your project schedule won't be on the critical path because Slack is going down. So once again, my name is Carla R. Jenkins. This is Projectize. I'm going to do a recap. I am a certified project management professional, certified Scrum Master and IDLE with 13 years problem solving experience in project management, big data, and IT service management. And you can follow me on carlarjenkins.com. Click the contact button. I receive all of your emails. My universal social media handle is Carla R. Jenkins. So whether or not you're watching this on my website, Carla R. Jenkins, Periscope.tv, YouTube Live, or Instagram, you can find me at Carla R. Jenkins. So the recap is number one, with Slack, always have a backup communication plan because 90% of the project management business is communication. Number two is Slack is not your company's email. As external communication tool that's proprietary, as is all of the other apps that you use to communicate, not just Slack, but MS Teams, Asana, all of those are Trello, all of those are external. Your company email is internal. And hopefully, when Slack went down yesterday, you had their phone number or their email, so alternative way of getting in touch with them. And then number three, make sure that your project schedule isn't coming down to the wire. I introduced critical path where your time lag is zero. And if you're late at that area of the critical path, the entire project is late. Those are the three things, the three lessons learned from Slack being down yesterday. And once again, you can get in touch with me at carlarjenkins.com/the contact button. And once again, whether or not you're watching this on Periscope, YouTube Live, or Instagram, my universal social media handle is Carla R. Jenkins. So I would like to thank everyone for watching this episode of Projectize, and I'll see everyone